Welcome to the Lightforge. This is ADWCTA.
This is Merps, and another week, and another, I don't know, sort of no
Lightforge.
announcement.
Oh,
Yeah,
oh. I thought you were going to mention the podcast that we're starting.
nah, I never think too much about whatever we do here. But man, I
About
was
what you're currently doing right this second.
nah, I never think about the present, man. The present scares me. The future holds possibility, and the past I can't change, but the present is scary, man.
So much
Anyways,
responsibility.
yeah, way too much. I don't do any of that stuff. But I was really hoping we'd get some news about the expansion this week. But we did get the announcement for the announcement,
Which
right?
is like the best news, right?
Well, now we know that it is going to happen, which I guess is better than no news and then Hearthstone shutting down on Tuesday, being like, "Yeah, guys, this
It's over. It's over. It
it's
was it
just
was too free to play. We couldn't make any money out of this thing.
way too yeah." It was just not a successful business model.
Yeah, like 50,000 users, but all free.
So it seems like by this time next week we'll have the theme of the expansion, which should be Karazhan or Karazhan.
Yeah, they're teasing a lot of things, right? With
Yeah,
like Antonidas and like a Noyotron.
yeah. Antonidas with a balloon in its hand and a Neutron with a goblet of oil, whatever that means. They're
Wait, is it a goblet of oil?
I think it's a goblet of oil. I'm
Like,
not
did you
really.
identify it as a goblet of oil, or did someone say it was a
Hearthpone
goblet of
did.
oil?
Hearthpone
Okay,
said
I
it was
trust that. Okay,
that.
I trust them more. No,
Yeah.
because like it's hard to. How do you know it's a goblet of oil, right? Like in a picture, it's just a goblet of something
Well,
in
is
it.
a Neutron gonna drink orange juice?
Oh, the Anoiltron has the goblet of oil. I thought the
Right.
Antonidas had the goblet of oil. I was
No,
like,
the
what the heck is
Antonidas has
Antonidas on?
the balloon.
Oh, Antonidas has the balloon. Okay, either way, it seems like it's
Yeah.
kind of festive. There's like magic going on. I don't know too much about the raid, but they've already announced it also beforehand, which is that this new expansion is going to be a little lighthearted compared to after what happened with the old gods, which was like a lot of tentacles and evilness and purple. So I don't know. They're presumably going with a lighter theme, which I'm actually like I'm not a fan of lighter themes. Because not just because me, but because lighter themes generally mean one thing: RNG, right?
That's fair. Yeah, I remember when we got Goblins versus Gnomes. That was a
Exactly.
very whimsical, fun theme, and we had a lot of RNG elements to it.
Yeah. So we'll we may do a light forge on that at another time, but it's just I don't know. There's a a foreboding shadow in the future now that I know what like exactly what Blizzard is going to go there. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll find a way to make things lighthearted without RNG, but I doubt it.
Yeah. So this upcoming expansion, I kind of am really impressed how much or how little has been leaked. Because I think maybe this is just my memory failing me, but for other expansions, I think we would have had a bit more information by now, where they, basically trickle in a couple more teasers. They send streamers and they send people who are, basically popping up within the community, like a few clues here or there. It doesn't really seem like we have anything so
D-
far.
do you remember League of Explorers? Are you totally forgetting the last adventure that Blizzard dropped on us? Which was like, hey, it's BlizzCon! By the way, we have a new expansion. By the way, half an hour from now, we're going to reveal all of the cards. By the way, it's coming out in 3 days.
Yeah,
In one speech, in one glorious speech by Ben Brode, I think.
yeah, that was kind of interesting. Like it's fun for the player. It's not really fun for those who have to prepare for it, like we would. So
But it's an adventure. It's not that bad, right? Like,
it's
we
not
can
that
go
bad.
week by week, and each week we only have to value like 8 cards.
Yeah, that's fair.
But yeah, so in the spirit of the new expansion, Shane Destroyer, one of our viewers, listeners, I guess we're on the podcast, viewers slash listener, suggested this topic, and I thought it was a really good topic, which is we don't really have to wait until the next expansion to start really talking about the next expansion because there's one thing that we know almost for a certainty that will happen in the next expansion. and that is that the Old Gods offering bonus will be going away. And so rather than kind of like work that in as like a side point in our discussion of the actual expansion, and kind of in my head, by the way, this is my bold prediction. The announcement has already come. The actual announcement will happen next week. And by the week after that, which will be the first week of August, we will have the next expansion available. And it will be the exact same thing as the League of Explorers, in the sense that there will be less than 1 week between the announcement and the actual time when you get to play the expansion. Which means, no, sorry.
I mean, it does make sense when you have a 4 week or a 4 wing / 4 week release, right? Because it's not as if you are actually releasing everything on the first week. So if it was like a GVG, a huge sort of expansion in terms of packs, and then you announce it and then you release it, I mean, the hype is gone. But for a 4 week wing, like everyone's really happy that you announced it. They're super hyped up, and that's coming out in a week, and the hype continues on for all 4 weeks, right?
Yep, exactly. So that's bold prediction. Also, they've had a while to work on this, so and it's just an adventure. And this team has been pretty good about hitting their deadlines. My secret for correctly predicting the exact release date of every single expansion since GVG is to just pretend they're going to release on the same day. Which is to say, in a year, there are 3 expansion releases, and those dates are always the same as the release date of the last wing or the actual release date of the expansion. They are at most off by 1 week. So, judging by that, with a 4-wing expansion, to hit the same release date, which is pretty much the last week or second to last week of August, you kind of have to release in the beginning of August. Anyway, because we expect that to happen, we also expect to actually have all the cards by next weekend, which means this is actually a good time to talk about losing the OG bonus, because we'll have more interesting things to talk about then. So losing the OG bonus, the Old Gods bonus. If you don't know what we're talking about, you don't just get offered cards as if they were cards. Like, not all cards are treated the same in arena drafting. They offer you class cards at double the rate that they offer you regular cards at. Of course, rarity. They offer you common cards more, rare cards a little less more, epic cards very rarely, and legendaries almost never. In addition to that, all of that, you also get your current set more frequently, like significantly more frequently than previous sets. So right now there is an offering bonus of, I think, 50% for Old God cards as compared to if they were in any other set.
Yeah, and this offering bonus, I mean, it really shapes the meta, right? Like we've seen it significantly change the way that the game is played from like classic Nax into GVG. Like that was a huge change. It just suddenly became much more aggressive. And then we saw it in the in the latest basically meta shift because of the offering bonus to the class cards and to just all the common neutral cards. The meta just slowed down so much. To probably the slowest it's ever been.
Yeah, so the first thing that's going to happen when you take... And of course, right? And actually, this is actually a pretty... Okay, I'm going to back up a bit. If we're going from something like League of Explorers to something like Old Gods, taking away the League of Explorers offering bonus has an effect, but not the biggest effect, because that was only on a few cards. That was an adventure. There weren't that many cards that had the offering bonus. But going from like TGT to League of Explorers, or now going from Old Gods to whatever this new expansion is going to be, that's going to be a huge change. And we noticed this when League of Explorers came out, that even in the first wing, that very first week, when there were basically like no League of Explorers cards actually in the meta, because only 1 wing out of 4 has been released at that time, even at that time, the meta totally changed in 1 day. And that's because the TGT bonus went away. So when a large set offering bonus goes away, a huge change happens. On the other hand, when a small set's offering bonus goes away, the huge change is actually driven by the next set. But because we're going from a large set to an adventure small set, adventures usually only release like somewhere between like 35 and 50 cards. Whereas a large card release is like 100 to 150 cards. So in this, going from a large set to a small set, the change is driven by the absence of the large set, not as much by the entering of the small set. So if you so this way we can actually look at what the what the Old Gods meta has done, and we can just kind of take all that away, right? Like turn it from an 11 down to like an 8. And then we'll have a pretty good sense of what the next meta is going to be like without even seeing any of the other cards. Now, of course, those cards do matter and they will change things. But we can say some things, right? Like Merp said, it was OG slowed down the meta a lot. Well, how did it slow down the meta? It slowed down the meta because, and I'm going to go through this based on our tier list, the Lightforge.com tier list. And common cards and rare cards that are neutral are the following mana costs: 7, 6, 6, 5, 5, 4, 4. Those were everything rated 60 and above. And the higher you rate it, disproportionately, the more likely people are going to take it, right? Because we're not like out there rating things and then people are like blindly following us, or at least hopefully not that many people, but we're rating them because they are good cards. So that good players, and then eventually, you know, most of the arena players will just take these cards more often. And if you notice, all of them are 4 mana or above. There's not a single curve card below 4 mana in there. And if you dig down a little deeper, a lot of those cards are also very favoring a slow game, right? They either have Taunt, or they're like Polluted Hoarder and they like draw a card, or they're Corrupted Seer and they are mass removals, or they're Corrupted Heal Bots and they, you know, heal your opponent. They just all slow the game down, even beyond their mana costs. And so the point is, all those cards are going to be, their offering rates are going to be like heavily reduced.
Yeah, so if you look at it in this way, like you said before, in order to really say exactly what the impact is going to be, you need both sides, right? And right now we only have half, which is we know what they're getting rid of. We don't know. We have the
bigger half. That's the thing.
Yeah,
we have the 3 times impact half.
Sure, you not only have the bigger half, and you look at it and say, can they make cards that are slower than this? And I'm willing to say no, right?
I mean, they can, but I hope they don't.
I just don't think they practically can.
With a magical party theme, they can't.
Right. So because this sound, you know, Psychotron, Bog Creeper, Corrupted Seer, like you said, these cards, it seems to be the limit to which they can push this sort of late game control style. You know, it's really tough for me to imagine the new cards being more controlly, right? And even if they're equally as slow and as controlly, the fact that there are going to be less cards already means that it's going to shift to much faster.
Right, that's a really good point. Even if they just like reprinted these really slow cards, it still would make the meta faster.
Yeah, and there's no way they can. I refuse to believe it. Although next week,
Bogger Creeper,
Psychoist Tron. I don't know.
Annoy, Psycho. What goes above Psycho?
Deranged.
Deranged? Nah, deranged is kind of like Psycho.
It kind of is. I don't know. Let's not make this into an adjective test.
All right. Okay. So we now know that me and Merps are not good at naming cards. So let's move on from that. The meta is not just going to get faster. A more specific element of that I'm sure everyone knows is a characteristic of OG is taunts. Right? That was the big OG mechanic. Not that it was introduced in OG, but that OG literally printed, like, again, we're going by the tier list in the sense that a 90 rated card will be taken much more often than a 70 rated card, which would be taken much more often than a 50 rated card. It's not that Blizzard printed 3 cards, 2 of them are taunts, and so that's how we measure how many taunts are in the meta. You measure what's in the meta by what people actually take. And in that sense, taunts almost tripled between pre-OG and OG. So that effect is going to go down a bit. So now we're going to have like a very noticeable, like at least 25%, maybe even 33% reduction of taunts, assuming that the new expansion has a normal amount of taunts, not a OG amount of taunts. Just to go back to our little thing there in the top common cards, two of the top cards were taunts, right? Two of the top four cards were taunts. That was just kind of never the case. You had Senjin as a top taunt, right? And then you had Bog Creeper. I mean, not Bog Creeper, sorry.
Fen Creeper.
Fen Creeper. It's just not useful to remember that name anymore now that Bog Creeper exists.
It's so weird. Like, Fen Creeper was fine before because it was one of the biggest taunts out there, right?
Yeah.
And it was a true taunt. Like, Lord of the Arena was not a true taunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
It
Yep.
was a big minion that had taunt. Like, Fen Creeper was actually a taunt. And then Bog Creeper and Cyclotron comes out. I'm like, why would I ever use you? Like, why would I ever use you, Fen Creeper?
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, that was kind of it. A Noyotron, depending on how you rate things, the Noyotron may also be up there. But those were the only taunts that were kind of in the meta, and now you just added a whole bunch of them. Especially Bog Creeper, right? Like, that's a card you take, like, Kraken level. I mean, not quite Kraken level.
Not
but
quite
close.
Kraken level, but
Close to Kraken level. Like, better than a Piloted Shredder level.
yeah,
Like
definitely.
around that, right? Which is kind of an insanely good card that you take a lot. Anyway, the point is, all that's also going away. So the next expansion, if there's not like excess of taunts, you're going to see a lot of things kind of regain their power, right? Like, one of the things I'm going to highlight a lot is, you'll hear this in the following discussion. It's Druid is going to come back. Druid's going to come back in a big way, because we all know Druid kind of sucks in the meta right now. It didn't get a lot of good cards. It's very reliant on this like beast synergy, and its hero power is stop dead by taunts. Less taunts, fewer taunts, Druid hero power becomes useful again. Now, kind of by the same token, this is one of the effects that I think is going to be really interesting. I think rogues are going to be even better than they are right now, because a lot of people think rogues are the best class. I think me and Merps will think mages, but like not by that much. Rogue is like the second best class, arguably the best class. We won't argue too hard with that. But I think rogues are going to be like significantly better in the next expansion, because their hero power is not stopped by the taunts, and as the meta gets faster, rogues have the best early game tempo denial in the entire, like, in terms of the rogue's kit, right? Early tempo denial is the rogue's wheelhouse. And so if everyone kind of shifts a bit more to like building decks that rely on early tempo, rogues just win out on that.
Right. Because right now, rogues can tempo out, but a lot of times we've said this when we play against rogues. Like, you almost don't want to play early game against rogue, because that gives them possibilities to like backstab Defias, right? It gives the rogue plays that the rogue wants to do in the early turns. So I could definitely see that. Yeah. All right. So do you have anything to add, or should I follow up with one of my predictions as well?
You can follow up with your. I'm going to do one more thing first, which is just to say the very last effect of having the OG Metagon, which is the most obvious effect.
Go on.
The cars are going to be offered fewer.
Wow.
Yeah. So like, if you are playing a rogue, for example, and you like Shadow Strike, you're just gonna see it less frequently, and that is the one mitigating factor in terms of my like view of the upcoming rogue dominance in the next meta, right? Like, besides what new cards are going to come in, rogues are going to get significantly fewer Shadow Strikes, and that's a big deal because Shadow Strike is one of the best cards in the entire game. And similarly, mages will be affected with Faceless Summoner and Twilight Flamecaller. Shaman will be affected, Thing from Below, Master of Evolution, Flame Wreath, Faceless. Warrior will be affected, Nazath's First Mate, Ravaging Ghoul, Bloodhoof Brave. So those are three classes that you will have to be less reliant on your top OG cards. Now, that's not to say they're going to get worse necessarily. Like I just said, I think Rogue is actually going to get better, assuming they also get, normally or above average cards. Because of how the meta is going to change. But it does mean that these are the classes that you should really watch for when it comes to possibly a drop in performance.
Yeah. Okay, good point. So you estimated that rogues will potentially get more powerful. I think warlocks will get less powerful.
Yes, yes, that was
Yes.
actually the next class I was going to talk about. But go ahead. Why do you think warlocks are going to get less powerful?
All right. I mean, quite a few reasons actually. Number one, possessed villager and Darkshire councilman right now are very good cards, right? And they have offering bonuses. And okay,
They're
so
good. They're definitely
yeah,
good, but they're
they're
not like
they're
the top
good,
cards, right?
and
Like I
they
even left them off of my list.
sure, and they also synergize with each other,
Right,
right?
that is true. They do
Which
synergize with each other
when you
very well.
have offering bonus cards that synergize with each other and both are common, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
But part of the reason is these two cards help the Warlock play a zoo sort of style, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which Warlock was always pretty good at playing. So once you beef that up, that was always going to make them a little bit stronger. And the fact is, Zoo is always good for control matchups, right? Like if
Yes.
you look at the constructed meta, like how like Zoo is very good against the uh, heavy control styles because you're able to chip in that damage. You know, you're able to basically force them to have like answer after answer after answer, right? And
Mm-hmm.
typically Zoo, you know, you have a very board, you can reload, and you see this in the arena. You know, you have sort of an imperfect zoo deck, but it's still a zoo deck. They have an imperfect control deck. But you're just able to tempo out all of this stuff. And even if they're able to wipe, their health is so low that you force them to have, you know, the perfect response 5 turns in a row in order to beat you. And
Yep.
it's just very hard to deal with the Warlock zoo sort of play style. So I think because the meta is so slow, because every other class has sort of this, you know, it favors this control sort of matchup.
Mm-hmm.
The Warlock is just in a really good spot right now,
Yeah.
and it's almost impossible for them to get stronger because they're losing out on almost the two perfect cards for the Zoo style, and
Mm-hmm.
the meta is going to get a little bit faster to catch up with the Warlock.
Yep, you're losing a one drop, and one drops are very important to warlocks. And when the meta is faster, your zoo styles don't do as well. Because think about how warlock works, right? Warlocks get the board, then they use the hero power, and then they get card advantage, right? That's
Yeah.
how the whole class works. Or you play like handlock, which really doesn't work in the arena. For very obvious reasons that you don't have the cards. So that's how warlocks work. And if you put your stuff out in the beginning, but your opponents are putting out just as much stuff as what you're putting out in the beginning, you don't really have an edge. And then it's a coin flip whether you actually get to use your really good hero power or your hero power is absolutely worthless. And that's not good. You don't want that coin flip. Right now, you almost always get to be on the board as a warlock because just no one is that fast, right? Like, um, people are struggling to even curve out. No one's thinking about like taking extra one drops. No one has that like those like quick small removals. You know, the consecrations are down. Like everything the warlock is afraid of in the beginning, their offering rates are all down, and there's nothing to replace that. Even rogue, which is like a nightmare matchup for the warlock. Your backstabs, all that stuff is going down. You had shadow strike, but that's 5 damage. That's not what the warlock is really afraid of.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a good response to Darkshire Councilman,
Yeah,
but
3 mana for 3 mana.
yeah, but by the time you kill that, the other small minions that the Warlock has tempoed out before then, that's going face, right? So
Yeah,
the
I mean, even then, you're still using Shadow Strike on a 3 mana minion.
yeah,
That's a
exactly.
win for the Warlock.
Yeah, typically you want to use that on like their 5 drop, and it gives you 2 mana worth of tempo,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So that's going to disappear. Right now, we've estimated that Rogue could potentially get more powerful. I think Warlock is definitely getting weaker. Like that's definitely getting a
yeah.
little bit weaker.
I can't see the Warlock getting better.
Yeah, I definitely can't see. Oh, who knows, right? Like they'll
They'll
maybe
release three one drops.
they'll release 3 1 drops and then give them 4 mana 7/7. That I don't know what the downside will be.
Discard a card.
Discard a card. 4 mana 7/7. Discard a card. Oh
That's about
god.
right.
Yeah, I mean that is about right. I think you would still gladly take that
Oh
card.
yeah, you will. But yeah.
Oh gosh. All right. So what's your next prediction for from losing the bonus?
Okay, for losing the bonus,
Yeah.
Okay, so I already talked a little bit about Druid and how much I like Druid in the once it loses all this OG meta stink that it has on it. Because if you guys remember, Druid has always been like a middling kind of class, always. And it's going to return there. The way they print these cards, the reason that Druid's kind of fallen off a bit is because they've been printing all these like beast cards, and I don't know, maybe they'll still go in with the beast synergy thing, but at least the meta's going to change. And if they go away from the beast synergy, even for just one expansion, that'll help the Druid recover a lot. Because it's the arena, you can't rely on all these synergies. They're not like unplayable by a long shot, right? Like we take beast synergies all the time as Druid, but they're not as good as just like solid regular cards. But the class I really want to talk about, it's the class we're going to play, which is the Shaman. Shaman had what I believe to be the biggest gains made in OG. Partly off of the amazing cards that they got, right? Like Flame Wreath Faceless, Thing from Below, Master of Evolution, but also I think it comes in a big part because of the slower meta. If you have a slower meta, your totems stay on the board. And especially if you have a slower meta that's focused on getting big things out rather than multiple things on the board, there's not like that extra like 2/2 lying around on the board able to repeatedly kill your totems. So you're forcing your opponents to make this choice, like, oh, I have a big thing, my opponent has a big thing. Do I kill my opponent's big thing, or do I kill their totem? And most players will choose the big thing, even if the totem is the correct answer. So you're kind of getting rid of that dynamic if you make the game faster. If you remember back in, even in like as recently as LOE, you would be able to get enough stuff on the board, the Shaman will totem, and you'll just divert one of your minions already on the board to kill the totem, while the rest of your minions either trade or go face because you don't have enough to trade anymore. But you would always get rid of all the totems. And it's just very difficult to do that right now. And so that will be, once again, a problem for the Shaman. Of course, it'll depend on what cards that they get as well. But between the fact that they're really like, there's no way they're going to give Shaman a card as good as Flame Wreath Faceless, I think.
No, well, it's not just Flame Wreath Faceless as well. It's just the whole package, right?
Yeah.
Even both of the rare cards are incredibly good. They gave them Flame Wreath Faceless, and they gave them a pretty good removal at the same time.
Yep.
And Stormcrack is like a pretty good removal, but these days just getting
a removal, yeah,
I mean, getting a bonus to a removal is ridiculous. That's incredible. Yeah, so I definitely see that this is about as good of a package as Shaman could possibly get.
And they won't get it in the next expansion, and the meta's going to shift against them, and they will I find it really hard to believe that, like, right now we rate Shaman with Paladin as second tier after Mage and Rogue. Yeah. I find it really hard to believe they'll stay there in the next expansion. Like, they're going to need some seriously good cards.
Yeah. So here's the thing, like when we do this evaluation, it's important to see, like, can it get any better for this class, right?
Yeah.
So that sort of helps us with the evaluation with the Shaman. And I'm also looking at it in terms, for the Mage, and it's going to be really tough for them to get two common cards that are better than Twilight Flamecaller and Faceless Summoner, right?
Yeah, but Mage is resilient. I don't know. Like, one, how can Mage get better? It's already the best class. That's like the opposite question now. It's really like, can the Mage sort of vaguely still do what it's currently doing?
It's really good. So here's the thing with Mage. I don't think it'll change much just because it's so hot. Like, if you look at the difference between like Mage, Rogue, and then everyone else, like there's a huge gap between those two classes and everyone else, right? Yep. So I think with the Mage, you won't see like an astronomical shift, but certainly I don't think that the cards that they get can be as good as Twilight Flamecaller and Faceless Summoner. And it's not as if those two cards have synergy with each other, but they sort of cover each other up, right? You have a small AoE, and then you have like a big minion. And that just goes along with their millions of removals and millions of ways to stall and freeze. It just really works with the entire Mage package. So okay, like whenever I say this, I'm like, it can't get any better for the Mage, and then they make two amazing cards, but with the mage, like I think this is about as good as it can get. Whether or not it changes sort of their relationship to other classes, probably not. But that's just because their cards are already way too good. The hero power is way too strong.
I'm going to say this. Medivh is like the central character of this upcoming expansion, right?
I don't know.
It's like his tower or something, right?
I mean, it's his tower, but I don't know if it.
And it's all about magic, right? And
Do
he's
you
a
know anything
mage,
about
right?
Warcraft? I don't.
But everything I hear makes it seem like in the same way that TGT was very paladin centric in terms of the theme, this particular expansion seems like it's going to be magic and mage centric. And do we remember what happened in TGT with the whole paladin centric thing and how good or bad paladins got?
So
All I'm saying is, if I'm just looking at history and I'm leaning towards the fact that Blizzard's going to repeat history, except this time not with the paladin. And it's the same time too. It was literally last year in August when TGT came out. This is the mage expansion. And what do we do in mage expansions?
Medivh.
We should probably make some good mage cards. We should probably make the meta favorable to mage. Like, this is just my theory, but I would not be surprised at all if Flame Strike is a card that is printed in the upcoming adventure.
Okay, so these are the common cards that they're getting. Flame Strikist, which is 9 mana, deal 5 damage to everything.
Yep. Fair card.
And also Keeper of Medivh, 4 mana, 3/4, turns a minion into a 1/1 sheep.
Mm-hmm.
And you would say that's OP, but what if you only have minions on your board, huh?
Oh man, you have to sheep your own minion.
You gotta sheep your own. What a drawback, man.
I would not be surprised if after this expansion, everybody flips out on Blizzard and goes, "Why? Why did you make the mage better?" And then Blizzard will be like, "But rogue is just as good." And you kind of sit back and you're like, "All right, that doesn't really help things that much." But yeah, just from my predictions about this, which is based off of a little bit of history, but not any inside information, and definitely nothing like that. I feel like rogue and mage are going to hold the top tier. And it's not like Shaman or Paladin is going to catch up. Paladin also, similar to Shaman, right? You need your space. If your opponent like tempos harder, it's not good for you because you need stuff on the board to buff. Less so than the Shaman, but still a similar philosophy.
Right. And I mean, one of the biggest differences between like the arena meta and constructed meta, not just, everyone thinks about the random cards and the drafting and whatever, and the fact that decks are much weaker because of the randomness. The arena meta is like part of the reason that it's so resistant to change is because the hero power plays such a big part in the arena, right?
Right.
And in constructed, like obviously the hero power fits in there, but because of the synergy of your cards and because of the power of the cards in your deck, the hero power matters a lot less, right? In arena, because of the weakness of your cards, essentially, the impact of your hero power is significantly more. If you are curving out all the time because you're playing constructed, and you built the perfect deck, you have like all these synergies, you're curving out, then what is your hero power really doing, right? And using your hero power is going to be so weak. But in the arena, like a lot of times you need that ping, you just want to create that extra 1/1 instead of dropping like a Frostwolf Grunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you do that, and the hero power really gets used a lot, and its effect in comparison to the power of your cards is magnified. So it's one of the reasons that we don't see that much change, and why whenever we do see a change, like for the warrior whose hero power sucks, we're just like, what happened? It's so.
Well, what happened is they printed only ridiculously amazing cards
for
a while.
I mean, we know what happened, but it's a huge surprise because of the need to sort of lean on these hero powers in the arena.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so I guess we'll end on this note, which is an ominous warning for the next expansion, and that is the bottom of our little class tier list here. Warrior. Not at the bottom anymore.
Definitely
But what
not.
happens in the next expansion? Because why, like you said, right? Why is the Warrior no longer at the bottom? There's nothing meta that's good for it or anything like that necessarily. What's
No.
happened is that they printed ridiculous cards for the Warrior
For two
in
expansions in a row.
yeah, for LOE. They printed ridiculous cards. It was just like, like a Fierce Monkey. What? A 3/4, which is the best 3-drop stat line that there was. And then you give a taunt, like, for free. And it's a beast.
Right.
Um, like, and then right afterwards in OG, N'Zoth's First Mate. That's like not even a fair card, right? Ravaging Ghoul, 3/3 for 3 mana, deal 1 damage to everything. These are just like when they're printed, they are insane. Everyone knows that they're insane. It does not take a genius to look at it and say this is an insanely good card, right? Bloodhoof Brave, with that enrage and the taunt, right?
Right.
So all these things, well, we saw how the Warrior didn't actually get better between LOE and OG, right? It's been enough time that I think we can safely say that Warrior's kind of been about the same. And then you look at the cards they got in OG and the cards that they got in LOE, they're about the same quality.
Yeah.
Right? They're approximately the same quality, and OG had more cards.
Yeah, that's true.
And you still kept the LOE cards. They're still in the rotation. It's not like they rotate out or anything. They just don't have the offering bonus anymore. And Warriors still didn't get any better. It was just kind of okay. So what happens if in the next expansion, remember what we were talking about in the very beginning, the large expansions and the small expansions? That was going from a small expansion to a large expansion. What happens now when you take away the offering bonus from a large expansion of these amazing Warrior cards, and you add in offering bonus from a small expansion where maybe only half of the class cards are awesome? Right? Normally that's not a problem, right? You talk about a class where you get like 1 or 2 awesome cards and 1 or 2 bad cards, or I guess in the case of a Venture, like 1 good card and 1 bad card, right? No one cares, right? That's like normal.
Yep.
But for the Warrior, that could be enough to send it right back to the bottom. Like not in a way where it's like, hashtag Arena Warriors matters bottom, but it could be enough to send it to where the Priest and the Hunter are right now.
Yeah, it definitely could. I think it could be mitigated by giving them like an offering bonus to a really good weapon, right? A really good weapon can definitely sort of help them out just because it prevents the dilution that people are afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
And right now in Warrior decks, you rarely run into the problem of too many weapons, right?
About 20% of the time, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, that's really little.
Yep.
That's really little.
Yep.
Before,
And that used to be a defining characteristics of how to draft Warrior, is how to avoid over-weaponing.
yeah, exactly. Like, make sure you don't have 7 weapons by the time you're on your 21st pick, right?
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh gosh, can I really take the 8th weapon? But
yeah, especially in the Nax meta when Death's Bite first came out, and then there were still all the classic weapons.
yeah, that was really bad. And then you could have like 4 Death's Bites and 2 Arcanite
Reapers, a Gore Howl.
Yeah, and you're just like, there's no way I'm using all of this. But by giving an offering bonus to the Warrior, it helps them keep the necessary amount of weapons. There's still no fear of over-weaponing because the probability is just way too low. That would definitely be a way to help keep them in the game. Other than that, though, yeah.
You just got to keep printing amazing cards for the Warrior, I think. Like, we saw what happened when you printed a lot of amazing cards. The Warrior didn't get better. It just kind of, like, locked in its position as, like, playable and okay and like, medium-ish. So you just got to keep giving it amazing cards, I think.
Right.
Because it's just never in any danger of becoming an overpowered class.
No.
Because of that hero power.
Just because of a hero power. And it always goes back to hero power, which means that no matter what, Warrior will always be like it needs ridiculous cards in order to rise significantly, and Mage needs just absolute stinkers for it to fall significantly. Because of the hero power. Same with Rogue as well, because that Rogue hero power is amazing at the beginning and mid stages of the game.
Keeper of Medivh, 4 mana, 3/4. Turn one of your opponent's minion and one of your own minions, including Keeper of Medivh's, at random, into a sheep.
Huh. Okay. That's
Sorry, I just made more sheeps than your version of Keeper of Medivh.
yeah. I'm like,
That's my
okay,
entire goal of creating that card.
okay. I'm like, you just want to make more sheeps, like all sheeps all the time. So there's gonna be
Turn him into a goat.
there is
There are goats in Warcraft.
well, no, there's no goats so far in Hearthstone.
In Hearthstone,
Right?
but there are goats in Warcraft.
Okay.
You can make a goat card. 1 mana, 1/1. It's the standard stat line for all animals, whether they're a squirrel or a sheep.
Yeah.
All right. Well, before we end our speculation on how the classes and just what the meta is going to be like in the next expansion, because I really do think this is going to move really, really fast, and we won't get a chance to talk about it if we don't talk about it now. Can we? I'm with you right now with and I think you're going to be with me, but maybe not. Bold prediction, which is not terribly bold. Next expansion, Priest is going to get all absolutely amazing cards.
I agree. I think so. If not all absolutely amazing, they'll do something like they did with the mage, which is give them. And I think this will always happen. Give the priest like a really weird card, which could work in constructed, but is absolutely terrible in the arena.
But it's an adventure. They're not going to have that many slots to give it.
Yeah, but then all the other slots will be really good. So I think there's going to be one stinker, and there's everything else is going to be amazing.
Because I mean, think about it. If the meta is becoming faster, that's bad for the priest. This meta is actually very good for the priest, and the priest is still not all that good. Yeah. So, I think the priest is in really big danger of becoming really, really bad. And the priest, really, like we said this before, unlike the hunter, in terms of card quality, OG's okay to the priest. The priest got okay cards in OG. They have Darkshire Alchemist, which is like a good card, and that other card, the 5/5/3, the 4/3, the better corrupted hoarder. 4/3, 4 mana draw card.
I know what you're talking about.
What's the card name?
I actually don't know. I'm actually not sure of it myself.
Damn it. Hold on. Shifting Shade. There we go. Shifting Shade. Like, so priests have like really solidly really good cards. They just don't come together to do what the priest needs. And so those cards are going to lose their offering bonus.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a good thing for the priest. The priest is in real danger of being like the definitive worst class in the meta. Because the hunter is going to be helped when all the taunts kind of leave the meta. But not the priest. Okay, that's what I wanted to end that on. Let's move on to question for the GOAT.
Excellent. So question from the GOAT is going to focus on death.
Yes, death.
Excellent. So this is like one of those icebreaker questions that I've sort of just turned into a question from the GOAT. So you probably heard this question. People ask it during those lame icebreaker sessions for whatever job or school or whatever. But people ask, like, what do you want written on your tombstone, right? So let's just say, what do you want written on your Hearthstone tombstone? Essentially, what do you want your one sentence legacy to be?
So when the Lightforge is no more, when the Grinning Goat is no more, and somewhere on like Liquipedia or something, there's like a footnote for our Hearthstone careers, what I want the footnote to say for ADWCTA.
Essentially, let's even just imagine an actual tombstone, but it only applies to your Hearthstone career.
A physical tombstone?
Yeah, okay, interpret it however you want.
Okay. Let's go with ADWCTA. He mattered. That's what I'm going with. Because it's all about the impact. It's all about the legacy.
Yeah,
right?
but that's
like you're dead.
I mean,
you're dead, right? Like there's nothing more coming from you now that we're doing a tombstone. So I want my tombstone to be, and not like sarcastically, but like really to acknowledge that I have made an impact in Hearthstone or anywhere, but it's the Hearthstone tombstone. So so that I would have mattered in Hearthstone.
That's resident sleeper material right there, man. It seems like you're missing a grand opportunity. My tombstone would just read, "This is fine, period. Got fined." It's like, I'm no more. This is fine, got fined. Bam. That's it. Like,
All right.
come on. Like, you missed a grand opportunity to not only sum up your career, but also, provide some insight in some way.
This is fine. So if you guys are totally missing the joke, I'm now going to explain the joke. And if you've never seen the arena coop, because you just have to kind of like watch any run we do, and you'll know we say this a lot and we mean it. We just say fine or this is fine after our opponent makes every move that is within the realm of like normalcy, right? It's like, oh, he did not play a Gog Saran and cast a Flame Strike on us.
Or even if he is like Mech Warper, Snow Chugger, Coin,
Yeah,
Shredder.
that's not fine.
Like,
No, that's not fine.
this is fine.
I would not consider that fine. But generally, a lot of things are fine, and Twitch chat makes fun of us because oftentimes we lose when things are fine.
Yeah.
Because
the correlation of when things are fine and us losing is very high.
yeah. Okay. Moving on from that very morbid question. Card good bad, where we tell you whether a card is good or bad. And today, I really like this one. It's Infested Tauren.
Yeah,
This
idea.
comes as a request from Grape Drink, another of our viewers / listeners, and we initially, like when I was initially, you could just track this, right? You can track this from when I made my like video series, which is the first time like I looked at the card and how down I was on this card. I was like, this is such a crappy card. It's ridiculously bad. And then you can listen to the podcast where me and Merps basically confirm with each other, it's a really bad card. This is just going to be a horrible card. And then you can see where Infested Tauren is when we actually rated it for the Lightforge tier list, which was not that bad. Like, if you just listened to what we were saying and never looked at the tier list, you would have come into OG thinking Infested Tauren was like a 30 rated card that you would never take it. It's like maybe a little bit better than Tauren Warrior, but probably not all that much better. But then you look at our rating, and it's like it's better than a lot of 4-drops. It's like better than a turtle. It's better than, like your bad 4-drops. It's around a normal 4-drop value. And then after we actually played with it, I think we moved it up by another 4 points. So now it's actually definitely okay. Like you're not upset at all to have an Infested Tauren in your deck. So what happened? Why is Infested Tauren not bad? Infested Tauren, by the way, 4 mana, neutral card, 2/3 taunt, death rattle 2/2 without taunt.
Yeah, once again, it's just a correct meta for taunts, right? And if you look at what Infested Tauren does, it just provides a really annoying body that your opponent has to deal with very slowly, and it either gains you an incredible amount of health because it just soaks up a lot of damage, from 2 sources as well. Or what it does is it just slows the game down and allows you to make plays, right? And as the better player, one of the ways that you can lose is to get rushed down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they go face, they don't allow you to make your amazingly superior plays that would definitely have won the game if this guy didn't curve out from turns 1 to 4, right? So Infested Tauren helps you do that in a way. And Infested Tauren synergizes with all the other taunts as well. If it was the only taunt available on the market, let's say, then it just wouldn't be enough. But the fact that you can get Infested Tauren into like Cyclotron, into Sunwalker, into Bog Creeper, and whatever, and then use that to hang on, make better decisions, basically prolong the game, and then win, it really helps it out. So when we were looking at it, we were just like, man, this is okay. And the best comparison was like Oasis Snapjaw, right?
Yes.
We were looking at it and we're like, okay, well, it's definitely missing some health from Oasis Snapjaw, but it makes up for it probably by splitting it into 2 bodies, right? Because the damage from your opponent isn't going to be perfect. But it turns out that it's not an Oasis Snapjaw, because Oasis Snapjaw forces nothing, It
Yes.
does nothing, and it is significantly it's significantly worse because it doesn't do any of this stuff. It doesn't sort of quote
It has no
synergize with,
initiative,
yeah,
whereas
no
a
initiative.
taunt has like half initiative.
Right, exactly.
Like your opponent has to do something to it if it wants to hit your face.
Yeah. And you put down the Oasis Snapjaw, and you can still follow it up with the taunts, but by that time you've taken some extra damage and whatever. And if you look at these these sort of annoying minions, having taunt as an annoying minion is exponentially better than not having taunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't make a board impact, you better be able to attack with it. But what are you actually doing with something that has to attack, right?
Right.
Past turn 2, it's already
Yeah.
outclassed.
Yeah.
So
You're removing totems with it.
right, exactly. So the difference between a 2/7 without taunt and a 2/3 split into a 2/2 with taunt on the front end, significantly better. And it's something in which it's sort of hard to see. And when we first looked at it, we just compared it from a stats basis, right? And with a stats basis, it's really pretty terrible. But once again, with a lot of cards, with some other cards in the
And I
arena,
don't even think it's from a stat basis really terrible because the Lightforge tier list is for minions, for all minions.
sure.
It's based off of a mathematical model that uses, the stats of the minion. And even looking at that and making the comparison to Oasis Snapdraw, where 3 of the health, if not a bit more because of overkill, has taunt, that makes it pretty good. Because take a look at, think about how highly we rated Bloodhoof Brave. That's like a 2/6 with taunt. Yeah, it has the enrage, which is why it's so high. Yeah, but that's why it's so high. But even if you just gave the turtle a half taunt, right? It's a lot better. It becomes a ton better, and the mathematical model accounted for that. So we did the math, looked at it, and we said, "Wow, we're not rating it that high." That's actually a really high rating, and so we bumped it down a little from there, but it was still much higher. We couldn't reasonably rate it the 30 we initially wanted to, and then after playing with it, we're like, all right, the mathematical model was just right. We just actually brought it back to exactly where the mathematical model would have had it.
Yeah. So Infested Tauren, not a bad card, and it's one of those cards that definitely was helped by the meta, but at the same time, it's also just us looking at it, recoiling at how terrible it seems, and then you think about it a little bit more.
It's at 4 mana, you don't want to see something with 2 attack. You really don't.
And 3 health. And
yeah, and 3 health. And a Death Rattle that didn't even have taunt, right? It would have gotten so much more respect from us if the Death Rattle had taunt. Because then it has 2 taunts, right? Which is really good, actually.
Right. I mean, it would have been a mini Sludge Belcher, right?
Yeah, and a bigger Annoyotron.
Yeah. So
and both Annoyotron and Sludge Belcher are rated really high for their mana cost.
Yes, definitely.
So this would have been a really highly rated card, but it turns out having taunt on the second minion would have been really good, but it doesn't tank the card to not have it.
Nope.
Alright, that's Infested Tauren. So in the end, it's average-ish. I'm at the point right now where I sometimes take it over a 2-drop if I think I'm going to curve out anyway. And it's like a Raptor or a Croc or some other bad 2-drop.
Yeah.
So that's where I am with Infested Tauren. And finally, let's wrap this podcast up with class talk about the Shaman. It's going to be a very special Arena Coup afterwards, not only because it is the Arena Coup after our 2-year anniversary, but also because it'll be the first time using a Murloc.
Oh, wow. We got it.
We got it. Scotty Urban, one of our viewers/listeners, has unlocked it for us. And so we'll be actually using a Murloc.
All right. Sounds good. So I guess time to talk about Shaman. Man, what is there to say that we haven't said already? It's basically just a tier below the top classes. The cards are really good. We've said this is about as good as it's going to get for Shaman. The speed, sort of the board state, the power of the cards that they're going to get. It's a good time to play Shaman because if what you're saying is correct and they're going to announce the expansion and it's just going to basically be in our hands in 2 weeks, essentially, then we definitely want to play Shaman before the expansion hits, right?
Yes, yes, exactly. This is a very good time to play Shaman, and the RNG God smiled upon us and gave us the Shaman. And it's good to play the Shaman right now because the snowball deck archetype works really well because no one's pushing you off the board in the very beginning, except maybe Rogue, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
that means more than 2/3 of your runs. You kind of have free reign in the early game of, at worst, going back and forth trading. Like, you're never just fully off the board. And that lets a shaman, like, establish control with an overload turn and then snowball off of that as your opponent kind of, like, sets up on a turn to over tempo after you overloaded, but then you snowball off of that. And you can just kind of win. And if you do have the upper hand, which will happen in about half your games almost, then you just win without needing to, do any kind of swings because you're a snowball deck.
Yep.
Snowball deck, by the way, is you place stuff kind of on curve and then you generate as much minions as possible, or you focus on buffing one minion. But either way, it uses your resources on the board to gain even more resources than you would have otherwise had. Like you think about things like Flame Tongue Totem, Stormwind Champion, and things that you can protect on the board, like Inspire cards, or maybe even like a Demolisher or something. Just things like that.
Yep. All right, that's it for the good old Shaman. From now on, it won't be the Shaman anymore. It'll be the Murloc, because I'd never see a reason to go back to Thrall after getting the Murloc.
But the Murloc is also a Shaman.
That's true. It's a shamanic Murloc.
It's a shamanic Murloc. That's why it's the Shaman class. That's why it's not, a new class called Murloc. They should make a new class called Murloc. I don't know about if this is how it works in World of Warcraft, if Murlocs also had classes, but they should just make them their own class. They're special enough.
Fair.
Okay, so that's it for the Lightforge. Visit us at patreon.com/grinninggoat. If you want to support us, that's patreon.com/grinninggoat. And otherwise, if you're listening to this live, stay tuned for the Shaman run. Next week, hopefully, we'll have information, like real information about the expansion to talk with you guys about and to theorycraft, and that'll be exciting. I don't know. Okay, so I'm gonna end this on a real downer because LOE was like super long, right? That was like 5 months, 6 months. It was like a really long time that we were in the LOE meta. It was a really long time. Everyone was bitching about it, but I was okay. I was having fun all throughout the LOE meta. Whether it was like very diverse, it was a good meta, and then OG comes along, and it really hasn't been that long. We've been in the OG meta for like not even 3 months, right? Yeah, we haven't even been in the OG meta for 3 months,
something like that.
Yeah, and I'm already like I've been at the very ready to move on to the next meta. So this is going to be a especially good expansion coming up, if only because it'll shake up the arena meta, regardless of what kind of cards are in it. So definitely looking forward to the announcement next week, and we'll see you guys back here on Sunday.
Bye guys. Bye guys. Bye guys.